Welcome back to Peril Pending, where today we're going to look at one of the craziest AI takes I've ever heard. I was looking through the internet, deciding on what I could talk about next, when I came across this clip from the Joe Rogan Experience with a Marc Andreessen. Anderson? I'm going to say Anderson. And it has some of the craziest takes I've ever heard with regards to programming, AI, the future of technology. So I've got a few clips lined up here. I'm not going to put on the whole episode. It was over 3 hours long. But, buckle up.
I've done a terrible job of selling AI.
Yes.
So sell it.
Yes. Sell it. I mean, look, so it is, all right, I'm going to give you the deepest of all.
Yeah, sorry, I will let this clip play, but remember the question there. Sell AI. Sell AI. Give me a pitch for AI that will make people happy with it, because obviously right now people are booing it for good reason. So give me the pitch that's going to make me want AI.
Pitches. I'm going to give you the okay. So Isaac Newton spent 20 years looking for this key to what he called alchemy.
Fantastic start.
And the idea of alchemy was to transmute something that was very common into something that was very rare. And the common thing was supposed to be lead, and the rare thing was supposed to be gold. And he said, there was this thing called the philosopher's stone that he kept trying to discover that would turn lead into gold. And the theory was, if you could turn lead into gold, then all of a sudden you have material abundance, prosperity forever for everybody. And you eliminate all drudgery, everybody's rich. And, there's a question, by the way, of like, if the world's awash in gold, is gold still valuable? So maybe there was a hole in the argument. But in any event, you may know that we have never figured out how to do that. And
right.
Gold is still rare and valuable. So imagine a form of alchemy that turns sand into thought. Pause on that for a moment. So chips are made out of sand. They're made out of silicon. So they're literally made out of sand. And so we gather up sand and a whole bunch of other stuff, and we apply all this advanced manufacturing technology to it. We create the chip. We plug the chip into a data center, into power. We light it up, and we put AI on it, and all of a sudden it's thinking. And so we've turned sand into thought. And so it's possibly the most revolutionary technology in the history of the species, maybe. It's certainly on par with electricity and steam power. It's certainly more important than the internet. And just think about what this means. And so, then again, people get immediately to and they're very serious practical implications, but just think conceptually, which is just like, okay, our entire life, everybody who's ever lived on planet Earth, like you're constrained in what you can think based on just what's in your head, right? Like what you know, and like how much time you have to spend thinking, and how smart and capable you are, and the complexity of the situation you're dealing with. And we can only get trained up in a finite lifetime to be an expert in so many things. And everybody has this experience in life where they run into a complex situation and they just don't have the grounding to be able to process it. And for a lot of people, that's a health issue where all of a sudden they're listening to these doctors saying all these contradictory things. And how are you supposed to figure out what you should do for, a cancer patient, or somebody who gets in a lawsuit, and all of a sudden you're listening to all these high-paid lawyers making all these claims.
Yeah, so do you want to buy AI now? We can turn sand into thought. Buddy, first of all, terrible pitch. Who's that appealing to? Nobody. Secondly, they're LLMs. They are advanced next word generators. You put in it, you give them an input, and the code will give you what it thinks, what it reckons. I shouldn't have said think. What it computes to be the answer to your question, because they don't think. It's not thought. That would imply consciousness. Just because it says thinking ... instead of loading ... does not mean it's actually thinking. Also, if you have cancer or you have been in a car accident, please do not use AI to try and get yourself better help. I'm sure a lot of us here are aware of what happened with the developer for Subnautica 2. He used AI to try and get out of paying the game devs, and that kind of went horribly wrong for him. But yeah, that's clip number 1. Sell me AI. Well, don't you know about turning lead into gold? And then we didn't do that with the Philosopher's Stone. But now we've made silicon into thoughts. And I can't keep sniffing. I don't know what this guy's been doing, but he's sniffing a lot and talking real fast. If he was sweating, we might just know what he's on. Let's move to clip number 2. It's from the same podcast, of course. This just saves me skipping around.
It's something interesting. You said you think 3 months ago, artificial general intelligence.
I think we hit the change. Yeah, I think we hit the change.
So I forgot the name. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name, but the test.
The Turing test.
Turing test. Alan Turing.
Okay, so
couldn't remember his name. You think it's there?
Yeah, for sure. So for sure. So,
but that should be like massive news.
Correct.
This is what's confusing.
Correct, and I totally agree with you. And we in the industry talk about this all the time, that this is not massive news, and it should be. And
right.
And so here's okay. So for people who haven't heard of the Turing test, the Turing test was for 60 years. It was the gold standard in figuring out whether AI would work or not. And
right.
the basic goal of the Turing test was can you, if you're a human being, can you tell whether you're talking to another human being, basically in a chat room, or whether you're talking to a bot. And for 60 years, it was impossible. Many people tried to write software to pass the Turing test. Nobody ever succeeded. We blew right through the Turing test over the Christmas holiday of 2022 when ChatGPT came out. We just blew right past it. We blew past it so fast and so hard, nobody has even bothered to do the test. Maybe there's probably a handful of papers where somebody's actually formally done it, but we blew through it like tissue paper to the point where it was not even. And again, older people in the industry like me, we're just like, wow, exactly your reaction. Like that seems like it should have been a big deal, and it's like, oh no, that was like yesterday's news. Like that turned out. Well, what we now know is it actually turned out to be easy. Part of the miracle of what we have now, there's now a large language model that this guy Andrew Karpathy used.
I'm pausing it there because he just goes on to talk about putting LLMs on different computers and how you can put them on your phone. Yes, you can. I don't know how that's got anything to do with the Turing test. So first, a few claims there. He reckons that a couple months ago, and this clip is from, I think this clip's about a week old. So this year, last month, he reckons that AGI was hit, artificial general intelligence, where basically that means that it's like at a human level and it's almost sentient. That didn't happen. That definitely did not happen. And if it did, then I think he's going to be taken away to a black site, because the minute AGI is created, that's the minute that the company that owns that AGI basically becomes the one and only company conglomerate on the planet, because you'll just task that AGI, build, like, why would they ever release that? They would just say, hey, AGI, build X. It would build it, they would sell it, they'd keep the AGI behind doors. You'd never know if AGI was accomplished, apart from the fact that suddenly a lot of companies would pop up out of nowhere and be incredibly successful with low staff numbers. So he's lying there. Don't know where he got that information from. Second, he talks about how last Christmas ChatGPT just blew through the Turing test, so much so that they didn't do it. Well, then how do you know it passed it? Luckily for him, I did do a bit of research. It looks like ChatGPT does not pass the Turing test. And yes, this is an article from Medium. I have put the link in the description. I'm going to just go over a couple of points. It is quite interesting. It does explain why it fails. It's pretty obvious why it fails if you know anything about these large language models. It says, in an experiment out of UC San Diego, the one the tech bros like, interrogators chose ChatGPT 4.5 as the human in 73% of trials. Weirdly higher than would be expected. So on the surface, it looks like it's passed. But the important difference between this protocol and Turing's original is that conversations were stopped after 5 minutes. And then it goes on to say, as we'll see, shortening the decision time is what allows chatbots to thrive. And in fact, even the 1960s Eliza chat program was judged human a quarter of the time. So the software has passed it from 1960. So again, I don't know where Mr. Marc Andreessen's getting his information from. Apparently him and the older people in the industry just thought, wow, this is great news. In a follow-up study, researchers at the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, adhered to the original protocol of the Turing test and allowed interrogators as long as they needed to make a decision. This is why they didn't pass, because they had to change the goalposts. In addition to computer imitating humans, they also ran man imitating women trials as a control. In the man imitating women tests, both the subjects are human, but one is a woman and the other is a man pretending to be a woman. Not only do chatbots entirely fail the Turing test, being properly identified 36 out of 37 times, but the control provides an explanation as how they fail and why the previous paper masked their obvious vulnerabilities. Again, anybody who's used an AI at all for a long period of time, as in you use the same chat window for a long period of time, you'll find that it works pretty well on small tasks, terrible on large tasks, but even on the small tasks, if the chat window stays open for, if you use that same chat window for long enough, it begins to hallucinate. And that's why they had to cap it at 5 minutes, because after that point, that's when the cracks would begin to show. So no, it didn't pass the Turing test, Marc Andreessen. Whoa, he's got some interesting takes. Let's have a look at clip number 3. This one, I think this one's my favorite of the whole episode. I didn't watch the whole episode. I was sort of jumping around, and these 4 points were what I thought were the most interesting. If you want to laugh, honestly, go give it a read, and then go give it a watch and read the comments, because it's crazy. After this video, of course.
So software coding a year ago was you sit there and you write code, and then you try to run the code, and there's bugs in the code, and you have to fix the bugs, and it's just whatever, and you just have to like sit there and do it. By the way, a fundamental challenge every programmer has ever had is like code is complicated, and so if you're writing all the code, you got to have it like loaded into your brain of like how all this stuff, all these different modules work together, how everything works. And so there's like this spin up process. Like you have to spend like 2 hours refamiliarizing your brain with all the codes, and then you like work for 10 hours, and then you spend 2 hours trying to like unplug from the thing and get back to normal life. So that's the old model. The new model is you work with a coding agent or a bot, a coding bot, and these products have names like Claude Code or Cursor or Codex. There's a whole bunch of these. And in this model, it's like working with ChatGPT, but like specifically for code. And so what you're doing is you're giving the bot an assignment, and you're saying, write me the code to do whatever. I want a new level in the video game where people can jump, or whatever the thing is. And you give it the assignment, and then it goes off for 10 minutes. It writes all the code and does its thing, and then it comes back to you like a puppy, and it's like, oh, here's the result. And then you then evaluate its result. You run the thing, or you look at what it's done, and then you say, oh, that was great. We'll move on to the next project. Or you say, oh, that's not quite right. That's not what I meant. I wanted the jump to be twice as high. I wanted people to be able to bounce off the walls. And then it does it again. And then so you get in this feedback loop where you're like talking to the bot every 10 minutes. Okay. So then it's like, what do you do during that 10-minute break is you open up another pane in your browser window and you create the second bot. And you start to give it assignments, right? Okay, so now you're checking in with 2 bots every 10 minutes, but that still leaves you another, 9 minutes of free time. So then you create the 3rd bot, the 4th bot, the 5th bot, and the state of the art today in the Valley is 20 bots at a time. And this is what the AI vampires are doing. This is why people can't go to sleep, is because you've got 20 AI bots that are all as good as the best programmer in the world that are doing exactly what you tell them to do on every project you've ever wanted to do. And they're running 24/7. And the only thing you have to do is be there every 10 minutes to be able to give them feedback on what they're doing.
Oh my God.
Right. And so you can imagine how hard it would be to unplug from that. And that's why they're staying up all night, and that's why they're so happy.
How much have Adderall sales gone through the roof?
Probably a fair, well, because everybody stopped eating and drinking. Probably a lot. Okay. So that's the state of the art. That's the state of the art today. What's the obvious next step? The obvious next step is the bots should have bots.
Oh boy.
Right. Managers, right? You should have managers, right? And so you should have a bot that's overseeing bots. And this is what's starting right now, right? So each bot should be able to itself create subbots. Right, and then you have a bot that gives out the assignment to the bots, and so then and this is just starting right now, but like when we're sitting here in a year, I think it's going to be routine to have 10 to 20 bots each that have 10 to 20 bots. Right. And if you think about it, this exactly mirrors what happens when a company grows, right? Which is, a company grows, you don't just hire 100 people, have them all work for one person. You have managers, right? And then you end up with an organization chart, right? With like a reporting chain, like at any big company. And so that's what's going to happen with the bots, is you're going to end up overseeing an org chart of bots. And then, of course, a year after that, it's going to be bots managing bots, right? And so then you're going to have 2 layers of reporting or 3 layers of reporting. And then you're going to have individual programmers that are overseeing 1,000 bots at a time. Right. Which means you're going to have individual programmers that are 1,000 times more productive than they were before. Right. And so now you've given every programmer in the world this level of superpower and capability. And you see what I'm saying? It's true that they're not writing the code themselves, but they're overseeing the entire thing. They're directing the entire thing. They're developing the strategy. It's their product sense that's going into it. It's their business goals that are going into it. It's their creativity that's going into it. They can let their imagination run completely wild. By the way, this also goes back to the thing. The bots never get frustrated with you. Right. So you tell a normal person, you hire somebody over here, you hire somebody here and you tell them you want a screen display and you want it to be an animated version of your thing you got back here. Okay, they spend 2 weeks doing it, they bring it to you, they animate it. It's like, okay, that's pretty good, but I actually want the whole thing to be whatever, purple and green, and they spend a week doing that and they come back and you're like, I actually preferred the old version. The guy gets like pissed at you because he's like, I just wasted my time. The bot's like, no problem. No sweat, like whatever you want. And we can try it 12 more times if you want. And if you want, I can create sub-bots to go do, 12 more times right now. Right? Or you tell it, this is terrible. Like, I can't believe you came back to me with this. It has all these bugs. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll go fix these. Right? And by the way, never gets drunk. Never gets sick, never gets high.
Right. Never gets depressed because his girlfriend broke up with him.
Never files HR complaints.
Right.
Right. And so, you see what I'm saying? And so all of this is the workplace version of what I described earlier. So all of a sudden, everybody in the workplace has this basic.
That was a long clip. There's quite a few points that we have to bring up here. So Marc Andreessen, I did a quick little look on him. It does appear that he did used to code in his early life and when he first started out. Looks like he was coding in 1993 and then for a few years after that, and then he sort of migrated into more of a business role. And that makes sense because what he just talked about with regards to programming was an absolute load of horse crap. That's not at all how any of that works in the world. And it's not at all how any of that should work. So starting at the very beginning, when he was saying we have to load it all into the brain. Yeah, you know what? It might be easier if we just play those points again and attack them one by one.
So software coding a year ago was you sit there and you write code, and then you try to run the code, and there's bugs in the code, and you have to fix the bug.
That's wrong straight away. You write the code, you write tests for the code, then you run the code, see if there are any bugs at that point. If you have a QA department, they'll do that. It goes back to you if there is any bugs, and then you fix them one by one. You don't need to know everything, okay? There's a full software engineering life cycle for that.
Bugs, and it's just whatever, and you just have to sit there and do it. By the way, a fundamental challenge every programmer has ever had is like code is complicated, and so if you're writing all the code, you got to have it like loaded into your brain.
No, you don't. That's also incredibly stupid. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you just sit down and code in the whole thing? You would break it up into tasks and you take it on one by one and you focus on one area at a time, taking into account where it's being used. You don't just sit there and go. You don't load it all in. And that doesn't make any sense at all.
Like how all this stuff, all these different modules work together, how everything works. And so there's like this spin up process. Like you have to spend like 2 hours refamiliarizing your brain.
No, you don't. Maybe you would spend if you've been on holiday for a couple of weeks, you would come back and yes, it's important to spend a few hours refamiliarizing yourself with the code base. But if you're working on this every day, you do not need to spend 2 hours every day refamiliarizing yourself with the code. That's crazy.
Brain with all the codes, and then you like work for 10 hours and then you spend 2 hours trying to
work for 10 hours and spend 2 hours trying to figure. So you're working 12-hour days. No, nonsense.
Unplug from the thing and get back to normal life.
Maybe in your company, but most developers, there isn't that unplugging. I mean, I can only speak personally. I like to code. I don't need to do the unplug. I'm very happy with it.
So that's the old model. The new model is you work with a coding agent or
Right, we don't need to play any more of this. No, the new model is not that you work with a coding agent. Some people do. Some people do work with a coding agent. And in my experience, they're okay. But again, they're only okay on very, very small tasks. And then you have to go through that code with a fine-tooth comb. Because without full context, the solution might work, but it may not be suitable for the future implementations of the project that you're working on. But it can help you get there on very, very, very small things. Also, I don't know where you got this idea of 10 minutes from. There's nothing to suggest that it is a stationary 10 minutes. The time, it can be less than 10 minutes. It can be a lot longer than 10 minutes. In my experience, it fluctuates quite a lot depending on what the task is, and also how often you need to get a refactor. So no, you don't. Also, why would you just sit there? You would be reviewing the code. You would still be trying to figure out the problem. You wouldn't. I know Mr. Mark here wants everybody to be entirely dependent and brain dead so AI can do everything for you, but that's not how it works in the real world, Mark. And then you would just create a second bot, he said. So now every 10 minutes, I just read a little bit from two bots. Well, what if one finishes before the other? What if one gives me a much larger input and so I need to spend a lot more time combing through it? What if they end up colliding? So now I've got to review both of these bits of code as they relate to each other and as they interact with each other. All of this will take a lot longer than 10 minutes if you are a serious developer. You would never then just go and create another bot. And then the idea that you'd have 20 AI bots. Any programmer having 20 AI bots, what exactly would they be working on? Because I can't imagine a project where you'd have 20 sort of tasks, 20 individual tasks that would require you to have an AI bot. That's insane. And then to go on and say that in the future, you'd have bots that are managers for 100 to 200 bots. And then, so you would say at the top, then it would be your bot manager. And then below the bot manager, there would be 100 to 200 bots. Mark, how is anyone supposed to read all that code? How is anyone supposed to test all that code? Also, the AI bots will create bugs. They are on an individual task. They will create bugs. It is not perfect. Typical rich mentality here from a CEO. Doesn't even take into account the possibility that these AI bots could make a mistake. And what if they do make a mistake and it slips through the cracks? Who's going to be held accountable, Mark? The bot manager? Well, what is that? What entity is that? Exactly, it will be the programmer. There will never be a timeline where one programmer is looking after 100 to 200 bots. That's absolutely insane. You'll see from the final clip where Mark is going with all this. You can tell at the end there, he doesn't really like the idea of his humans, does he? This one's not going to get drunk or depressed. And if I'm incredibly indecisive with what I want, then my programmers won't be pissed off anymore because they're robots. Here's an idea, Mark. Maybe you sit down and maybe you think about what you actually want to create first. Talk about it with your team. And then when you've got the final product ready for development, you can hand that over to get worked on instead of changing every goddamn 2 seconds. In this last clip, you're going to see the real reason why this CEO wants to replace people with AI, and it's not shocking at all.
And I'm like, what does the world look like?
Yes.
In 20 years?
Correct. So in 20 years, there are many important questions within that. But one of them is the number of AI bots is going to be orders of magnitude bigger than the number of people, right?
Whoa.
Right. By definition. Well, let's just start with, okay. To start with, what do we know about let's think about this, right? So what do we know about the global population, right? So what do we know about the global population? We know it's going to shrink. Right. There's 2 things we know for sure. The global population is going to shrink a lot because people aren't having kids at anywhere near the historical rate. And then the other is we know it's going to age, which is another consequence of that. So the world population is going to get smaller and older. Right. And so one is like we're literally going to need workers. Right. And there's.
But workers for who, Mark? Because if the population is going to get smaller, which it looks like it is, then what are you building things for? There's going to be no one to buy them or use them. Are you saying the robots are going to buy it, Mark? Are the robots in the room with you?
Only basically three ways to get workers. Like one is to like reproduce, which we've, in a lot of places, especially in the West, we've largely stopped doing. A second thing to do is import huge numbers of people, and go through everything entailed in that, which is what we're dealing with in our politics right now. And the third is we have AI, right? And so they're gonna be billions of these bots running around doing all kinds of stuff, and they're just, 20 years from now we're gonna be used to all this, and so they're just gonna be in our daily lives, and they're gonna say,
Start the clock. In 20 years' time, we're gonna have billions of bots all around us doing all sorts. No details.
welcome us when we get home, and they're gonna, do.
They're gonna welcome
whatever.
us when we get home. Mark, that's what your family does. Why would you want a bot to do that?
They're going to be with us all the time. We're going to be talking to them all the time. So we're going to get used to it. The other thing that's going to happen is robots, right? And so everything that we've talked about so far here has been software AI, right? So just apps and software and data centers. We all believe in the industry. We all believe that within a small number of years, we're going to have the ChatGPT kind of moment for robots.
Yeah, but you also have been saying that you guys in the industry also have 20 manager bots with 100 to 200 worker bots under them for every programmer, which is just complete horse shit. And you also said that ChatGPT passed the Turing test, which, as I've proven, is also bullshit unless you move the goalposts. So I really don't... Who are these people in the industry? Is it just more like AI psychosis CEOs? Because you've all been drinking the computer Kool-Aid too hard. It's never going to happen.
Robots, where general purpose robots are going to start to really work, right? And so then you're going to have physical AI, and it's going to be amazing and a little bit strange when it starts, because you're going to have this robot that's like, I don't know, clearing your dishes, and it's also going to be like Einstein level smart when it comes to quantum physics.
Well, this is why Elon canceled the Model S and the Model X to make room at his Tesla factories for more Optimus robots.
To build the robots, that's right, and that's why he created. And this is all obvious people now, but this is Elon has now this full master plan for everything where it all fits together, and there's two sides to the robots.
We're going to leave it there because now them two just go on to suck Elon Musk's dick. But yeah, that was really something. Man, this really gives you a glimpse into what some of these CEOs think. They genuinely think, at least Mark in this case, he believes there is an artificial general intelligence. He believes there are developers out there that are apparently working with 20,000 bots that are writing a program for them, and then also managing to read, review, and publish all that code in a single day. And he also is very happy that his bots can't make HR complaints, which I think is the most telling of all of this.